All right. Hello, everyone. I'm now set up. We're living in a small amount of chaos. This podcast is going to be chaos. I think I have a lot to talk about, and I was gonna write it down, but then the act of writing it down made me more stressed. So I decided, you know what? It's fine. We're just gonna go and we're gonna wing it, and it's gonna be whatever it's gonna be, because that's how we're doing life right now. So, introduction. That's where I should start. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah of the Nap and Knit podcast, which is where you are. Thank you for stopping by. It's lovely to talk to you, to rant to you, to babble to you. I've got a lot of chaos energy. I've got a lot of chaos going on. I'm surrounded by chaos, which you can see some of, but honestly, you can't see most of. But I just really okay, so it's been a while since I've made one. I tried to make them at the start/end of each month so I could do my stash countdown and stuff like that. But it's been a hot second because I was traveling for most of March and now I'm back, which is lovely. But just trying to get my act together and find time to film and put everything aside was just really, really hard. And on top of that, this is not a complaint, but the weather got really nice. So it's been 60, 70 outside. And I have just been sitting outside. I've just been absorbing the light and the sun and feeling like a human being again. I'm taking my dog on some walks, just enjoying it. So it's been really good to just take a little break and not feel like I'm forcing myself to do anything. But all of that said, I'm very happy to be podcasting. I love watching knitting podcasts. It's all I do. I go to the gym and I go run on the treadmill and I prop up the little phone and I set up one that's 30 minutes or so I can just run and watch it the whole time. And it's incredible. I watch so many knitting podcasts. It's so embarrassing. And that's fine. That's who I am. So, but regardless, I guess to say, I hope you can find some joy in this too, because I have fun just talking about the things that I've made and sharing them. And I know I find a lot of inspiration in seeing what other people make, so maybe you will find that from this too. So the last time I podcasted was, I believe, either the end of February or the start of March. And in the beginning of March, we were going on a trip. It was a really big road trip, which I can talk about later. I'll do life stuff at the end for those of you that don't care and just want the yarny stuff. But it was a really long trip, all the way basically down to Texas, around a little bit, and then back up to Wisconsin. So I did get a lot, I don't know, a lot, but also not a lot of knitting done during that time. So I do have a lot of finished objects to share, and weirdly enough, I don't have a ton of works in progress, which is unusual for me. I usually like to have a lot of things on the needle at once, but I've just been kind of casting things off, and we're kind of at a point where I'm what do I do now? This is probably coupled with the fact that it is Sock Madness time. So for those of you that aren't familiar, Sock Madness is a yearly sock knitting competition. There's a Ravelry group if you want to look it up, but it's already started this year, so you wouldn't be able to join until next year. You get a lot of free sock patterns if you participate and you qualify, which usually means making a specific sock to required specifications. There's a whole lot of details about it. If you want to know more, definitely feel free to reach out to me. I'm not a sponsor or anything like that. I'm just a person that likes to do it. But I've done it 3 or 4 years now. That kicked off in February, and I think last time I showed a pair of socks for that. But the way that it works is you get 2 weeks, or there's a set number of people on the team that you're on, but you're competing against the people on your team. So you have to finish faster than that number of people. So it might be 35 people passed in round 2, but now only 30 people get to go through. So maybe some people won't finish and it would take all 2 weeks, but some people might finish within a week. And then if 34 people finish in 7 days, then if you want to get that last spot, I think I said 30 people. Anyways, you have to either beat the other people and remain within the time limit. So when the sock pattern drops, I am prepared to drop everything I am doing and only knit sock, which leads to some really quick socks. But I think that is also contributing to my hesitancy to cast things on, because I'm just sock ready. But I'll show you some of those socks today. So all of that said, this is going to be a little weird because I usually try to do like the month demarcation so I can know about what I've done in the past month, but it's obviously like into April now, so I have some April finished objects and things too. I'm just going to go semi-chronologically, and when I go through my yarn quantities, it's going to be specific to March, but I'll just call out the things that I don't include in it, and hopefully it'll all make sense. And I honestly don't know that anybody cares about the yarn quantities besides me anyways, but that's fine. Just put this little guy back here. So let's get started. I think the first thing, well, okay, we'll start with finished objects, then we will go to works in progress, then we will go to acquisitions, because I have some even though I'm not supposed to. I mean, I'm allowed to, it's fine, but I was trying to not. We'll go to acquisitions, and then we will maybe do future plans and so on. At the end of my finished object section is when I'll talk about yarn totals and things like that, specifically because my acquisitions are April specific, so I will count those in the April total versus the March total. So after all of that, I might just go into life, books I'm reading, dreams I have, other craft-wise, just whatever in the world I feel like talking about today. And I can't promise that it will be interesting at all, so do what you will. I think I need another haircut. I like to have these little guys like right around here, but I've been just having my sister cut my hair recently, and she lives not where I live, so we only really get to see each other if we both reconvene back at my parents', so like Christmas basically. And she didn't do it over Christmas because she usually does it outside and it was cold, so sad. But anyways, finished objects, let us start. So the first finished object I will talk about, and I do have my little notes down here, so if I'm looking down, that is why. But the first one that I'll talk about is my half and half triangles wrap. The half and half triangles wrap is a free pattern by Purl Soho. You can just look up half and half triangles wrap and you'll find it, but it like had a moment, and maybe it's still having a moment, where everybody was knitting it and just like in love with it. Just a lot of different people were working on this project, and that is what inspired me because I saw everybody else doing it and I was like, well, I want one too. So I ordered the recommended yarn, which was the linen quill by Purl Soho. And I don't remember the exact composition, but I know it definitely has linen and it definitely has wool. But it's like a really lovely, soft, but super warm yarn. And I knit this. There's two sizes, or there used to be two sizes in the pattern. I think a 210 stitch version and a 260 stitch version. And of course I did the 260 stitch version because just like, if I'm going to make a gigantic rectangular shawl, we're going all out. We're not, oh my gosh, did you hear my stomach? We are going all out. We're not, you know, we're not going to just do the 210 stitch version. I didn't gauge swatch or anything like that, so my gauge I think is bigger than the pattern. And this thing is massive, enormous. So the colorways I used are Juniper green and Twig brown. I really, really like the Juniper green because it's a little bit like, it's got more variation in person. Like it looks kind of almost, it's got like a gray undertone when I show it there, but it doesn't have that in person. It's got more of a brightish yellow kind of thing. And then the brown actually does look pretty much like this. Maybe a tiny bit warmer colored, but that's just about it. I'm in my basement. The lighting is not optimal, but I tried to film outside and the birds are so chatty, so it just didn't work. But anyways, those are the two colors, 260 stitches, and I am like sitting in a corner, so it is impossible for me to really show the size of this, but I mean, these are my arms. This is arm 1, this is arm 2 over here. If I fold it in half, then I can show you how wide it is. I folded it in half. It's this wide, which is maybe like 2.5 feet. It's a guesstimation. It's a very bad guesstimation. Overall, like, I think this thing is my arm's width, so it's probably about as tall as me, which is like 5'4". I have not worn this as a shawl because by the time I finished it, one, I was in Texas, so it was not, the weather was not there, but two, it's just so insanely large that I just haven't had, it's just not right now. But I've seen how a lot of people style it, so maybe when I actually get a chance to wear it as a shawl, I'll figure that out. For the time being, I have been using it as a blanket, and it is incredible. So part of the trip we went on was, we went on an RV, and it was an adventure, and we're not going to go into that because it didn't go very well. None of our faults. The RV was not a good experience because the RV was bad. But I brought this with me on like the trip thinking like, okay, like I can wear this and snuggle on up under it because we were going to go to Big Bend, and Big Bend was literally supposed to be 30 degrees that weekend, which is like, okay, Texas. Sorry if people in Texas are offended by that. Big Bend is like geographically not close to a lot of the places in Texas that were very hot during that same weekend, so it like makes sense, it's fine, but it's also just like, of course the one weekend we were gonna go, it's gonna be that weather. It's like I brought Wisconsin with me. So I just used it as a blanket there, and everybody else that I was with used it as a blanket there. Not at the same time, but it was just so warm. I was like shocked because it's like, you can still see through, like, not like see through it, but you can get impressions through it. But it's just like the coziness was unbeatable. And we had like other blankets there, like somebody had a t-shirt quilt and stuff like that, but they just did not feel even close to as warm as this little guy, which makes sense. It's wool, but it was shocking. Kind of. I don't know. It was exciting, and I am a really big fan of this. In terms of knitting it, it's a free pattern, so I'll just, and I'm sure everybody has seen some kind of description of this at some point, but I started at the green end. This is my cast on edge, so you cast on the 260 stitches. You knit with one color at a time, so you start decreasing from 260 down to 1. And at that point you have a big green triangle. I should stop waving this around, I'm sorry. It's just hard to demonstrate, I think. At that point, at this edge, you cast on the brown, and you start working your way to basically, like, you knit across, and then you start working your way from 1 stitch of the brown to 260 stitches of the brown. That is where I lost all hope. I started this project sometime in 2022, and I didn't finish it until March 9th because by the very end of it, it just felt like such a slog because everything was so slow and every row took longer than the last, and that is like not the way that I like think or do things. I think a lot of people are like this, but like if I'm going on a road trip and it requires 20 hours of driving broken up into 2 days, because I did a 24-hour road trip once where we just drove for 24 hours straight, and let me tell you, never again, probably. But 20 hours broken up to 2 days. I will do 12 hours on day 1 so that I can do 8 hours on day 2, because the mental load of day 2 being shorter than day 1 is so important to me, because if I do 8 hours on day 1 and 12 hours on day 2, those 12 hours will feel like a lifetime. Like I will be so miserable during those 12 hours. And that's kind of how I felt with this, is the building up and it getting longer and longer. I was like, I'm never gonna make it. All that to say, when I did cast off, I immediately thought about casting on another one. I was like, oh my gosh, when am I gonna make my next one? So I guess it didn't impact me all that much, but it was definitely an experience. I used up 260. The pattern calls for you to buy 3 100-gram skeins of this fingering weight yarn. I used up, weirdly enough, 260 grams of each. So 260 stitches, 260 grams. So I have a little bit left of each. But all of that it turned out to be approximately 1,141 yards of each color. So this alone, I destashed over 2,000 yards of yarn, which is really exciting because I'm trying to use more than I bring in is the big goal. So that's like a pretty big contribution to this, even though it's been a months and months and months long project. I really did enjoy it. I think the problem is maybe that now I am unemployed and the plain stockinette garter projects are always there versus being like breaks from things. Like it's not like I'm bringing this to work and knitting a row at work and feeling like good about that. It's like it's always there. So I think that might be why I'm feeling so weird about it. But yeah, that is my half and half triangles wrap. That is my first finished object, and I didn't mean to talk about it so long. I am going to take this moment to show you guys. I know I said I was thinking about doing another one. At the time that I bought that yarn, I did obviously buy more yarn because why would I not? It was a sale, and that's how I'm going to justify it. And this is also the Purl Soho linen quill. Well, I can tell you the quantities. So it's 50% fine Highland wool, 35% alpaca, and 15% linen. This color is wheat flour, and this color is turmeric yellow. I love this yellow. She's so cute. I only bought 2 of each of these, so I had thought that maybe I would make the 210 stitch half and half triangles wrap because I think these would be really cute together and like super nice and springy, and a slightly smaller wrap might be good. I don't know if I'll do that. I think I need some time, and maybe it would just be better to find like a different shawl type project, or maybe just use one of the colors. I don't know. I'm not in any rush to start these, but I wanted to show them because they're right here and they're cute. So yeah. Also, just to say, I'm wearing this shirt. This is not something I knit. I bought it at a store a long time ago. I've thought about knitting something like it. It's just like a very cute, flowy little thing. And I think it would be not terribly difficult to knit, but it's not something I made, so I'm not going to tell you anything about it. Yeah. Next finished objects. I'm going to talk about my Sock Madness socks, and I'll just do these in a row. I do not believe I shared these ones on the previous podcast, and if I did, I'm really sorry. Maybe go forward a minute because I'm not meaning to do it again, but here I am. I'm putting these on my sock blockers, or one of them on my sock blockers so you can see them better. The sock blocker is just an old placemat. I found a template online and my husband just printed it and cut it out for me. I really would love a pair of beautiful wooden sock blockers or something like that, or like even the nice little like the ones that don't have a center so they dry more easily, but just not on the budget right now. So, and these guys work perfectly fine. So let me show you these. These socks were the first round of Sock Madness socks. So the qualifier round was the girl with the balloon. This was round 1. These are called the Valgus socks, V-A-L-G-U-S, and they look like this. And so I obviously have 2 of them, but I'm only going to put one on the blockers because they look pretty much the same. They are symmetrical, so this one kind of goes like this, and the other one kind of goes like this, the other way. But they're just like a cabled sock. You might be wondering, what is going on? Like, what is this construction situation? And so let me just zoom in a little bit and show you. These are actually knit largely flat. So you knit this whole like cabled panel, and then you do an afterthought heel. So you just kind of like, I think you skip the heel, do the rest of the foot, and then you do the toe, and then eventually you sew it all together along the seam that you created. And it's not straight up and down. It does have that slight curve to it, so there's some increases and decreases associated. But these ended up fitting me perfectly, which was amazing, and I think they turned out super cute. Like, I love these colors. I think the variegation is very nice. I had to pause. I told my husband to leave me alone and leave me in the basement, and he just comes waltzing down singing, and I was like, sure. And I don't know, he just forgot. Anyways, these are really cute. I did use the same base of yarn for each of these, so it does feel remarkably consistent between the two. That yarn is a Hazelnut Blueprint in the colors Plume and Verdigris. Verdigris. I can't remember the exact composition of that yarn, but it is a sock yarn, so it's some kind of wool nylon blend. And yeah, I think I've worn these ones, which is maybe gross, but that's what socks are for. So these bad boys, I started on March 4th, and I finished them on March 6th, which is like pretty dang fast for a pair of socks. Like a pair of like socks where you have to think at least a little, but that's what Sock Madness does to me. So that's the first pair. I'll talk about the second pair of Sock Madness socks now, which are super cute. These are called the Celtic Rain socks. Another thing about Sock Madness is there's a lot of specifications. So there's length, there's width, like size specifications. There's also like you have to do certain techniques. So this one had beads, which is not something I typically do in socks, but I always will when it's Sock Madness. So if I have beaded socks, assume they're from Sock Madness. But these are sort of a cabled sock. They were worked. I forgot everything about them is what I'm realizing. I'm pretty sure you started on the toe and then you worked your way up. So they're toe up. I'm going to put something here that says whether they were toe up or cuff down, because my brain is gone. Completely gone. I have no idea what I did. They're called the Celtic Rain socks. This was round 2 of Sock Madness. These are a 68 stitch sock, which is bigger than my normal, or 64 stitch sock, which is still bigger than my normal sock. I normally do a 60 stitch, but they were knit on normal size 1 sock needles in the Teal Torch Knits sock base in the color Sinking in My Soul. You can see it's like a purpley, and it's got all these speckles of different colors, and it, I think, shows off the cables really beautifully. Just the way that they show, they're very crisp, and you can see the beads here also. I think these are really beautiful. They're not the type of sock that I just choose to knit for funsies, and they definitely were a little hard because the pattern, as you can see, like isn't super consistent. Like it shifts and it doesn't stay the same on any given thing, so you have to reference the chart pretty much all the time. They're yet again mirrored, so it's also hard from that aspect of like this side has all the beads, this side is kind of like fading out versus the other way around. So they're so lovely when you put them on your feet, but to knit they're a little bit of a pain. These guys were started on 318 and finished on 322, so again, really quick. I just kind of was trying to blast them out because Sock Madness makes me a little crazy like that. They're a little bit too big for me, but I don't care. A lot of times I end up giving my Sock Madness socks to my husband just because they tend to fit him a little better, but I want to keep these just because I think they're really pretty. I mean, like, he could wear them, I don't care either, but I'll just use them as more of like a house sock type of situation. They'll probably be like a tiny bit too small for him, a tiny bit too big for me. So maybe if I can think of a friend that would really love these, I would give them to them. But most of my friends have the same size or like much bigger feet than me. So I don't know that there's like a perfect person. Either way, I really like them, so I kind of want to keep them anyways. But yeah, they have a really nice stretch to them because of this kind of pattern, and I just think they're very gorgeous. So this was the second pair of Sock Madness socks I finished. Took longer than the first pair, but they're there. I do have a third pair, but technically those were started and finished in April, so I am going to show you, but I'll show you a little later while I show you 2 other finished objects that I have. One of them I don't actually have, but I have almost an exact replica of, so I will show you that so you can see it. This, as many of you may know, is the Look at My Holes pattern by James N. Watts. This is one of my favorite patterns, and this is one that I knit for myself ages ago, and I wear all the time. This is a size 3, and I wore it when I was at home for Christmas, and my sister said she wanted one, and I said yes. So I made it for her birthday, sent it to her, and she's loved it. She said she wore it already, and she got a compliment on it, which I was like, ah, my heart. And now I'm like, do I knit her everything I wear? Like, more to come on that. But this pattern, you knit the neckband, it's got raglan, and it's really hard to see in my yarn because my yarn is like super loose and floppy. But there's raglan increases. You knit the sleeves, you knit the body. I think mine has a little bit more ease than is intended, but I tend to like things that way. And I did make the body a little longer than intended as well. I made those modifications for my sister's as well because she had tried mine on and liked the length and fit. Just she's a little bit smaller than me, so I made her one size down. This yarn is Sublime Tussah Silk DK, which was a yarn that I found at a what are those things called? Thrift store. I found a thrift store. I found a bunch of balls of it and I bought all of them because it was like, okay, I'm sure I can use this for something. I don't know what I would use it for if it wasn't like a top like this because it's just so soft and slippery and it kind of just like falls apart. It just falls out of the ball as you're knitting with it, which is something that I think High Fiber Knits was describing earlier, just like this thing where it just like falls out of the ball and it's so annoying. And I was like, yes. That's what happens. I think she was talking about knitting for all of Pure Silk, but this is also a silk-based yarn. And I was like, yeah. So I don't know what else I would use it for unless it would be like a really flowy kind of tank top situation or something like that. I had to take a water break. I don't normally talk this much during the day. Ooh. So, look at my holes. I couldn't recommend this pattern more. I want to make another one without doing the ribbing at the top or remove all the ribbing, basically just kind of do the pattern using the same yarn and then also make it long sleeved so that I can wear it. And I feel like I will just look like a cool witch woman. And that is a vibe that I feel is very important for anybody at any time. So, yarn wise, on mine, I obviously used more than my sister's because mine was a larger size, but I can tell you that for hers, I used 188 grams, which worked out to 375 yards of yarn, which feels a little surprising. I weighed it though, so that must be right. It's kind of dense, so maybe that makes sense. If that's wrong, I'm gonna maybe like look at how much this one weighed and then figure out if that's wrong. If that's wrong, I'll put notes and stuff in the comment below. But I think the reference in the pattern was pretty good for how much yarn I used and so on. So I really love this pattern. I will certainly knit it again at some point. Just I haven't yet, but I'm sure I will. It also makes like a really cute like beach kind of cover up situation. Like it's not covering a whole lot, but it's like that extra layer if you don't. Sometimes if I'm like at the beach or something and I'm wearing a swimsuit, I like just want something over that, even though it's not actually providing that much anything, just for the like emotional support. So it's an emotional support garment and I love it. But yeah, that was my other finished object. That worked up pretty quickly as well. I started it on 310 and I finished it on 329. The first one that I did of these, I started on a trip to Taiwan and I literally finished it in like 3 days because we were in quarantine and all I did was knit on it and try to fix my sleep schedule and that didn't work. So Took about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks for that to finish. And then my final finished object that I will show you for the month of March is my Lento. Sorry. Here she is. I have not blocked her, but I have worn her like 19 times. And I'll put her on right now so you guys can see. What I need to do next time is write down the names of designers. I am going to put all the information below so you can go find them, but I am sorry for not mentioning them now. I just don't have my act together quite that much. But this is the Lento. It is a pattern that just like was another one that everybody was knitting. I think there was a knit along called like the Let's Lento knit along, which was ended by the time that I started this, but just seeing them all knit made me want to knit it. I knit the size 2, and it's like, I think a pretty perfect fit for me. Like, this is how I like for sweaters to fit. It's a little bit big, but not like overwhelmingly big. And for this one, I started it on 316 and I finished it on 329, which is really fast, like 2 weeks. Now, the reason for that is the gauge for the Lento, if you're not familiar with it, is super loose. So it's a really thin garment, but because of the fact that it is a mohair and a fingering weight yarn combined, the mohair really like fluffs up and fills out a lot of space, so it doesn't present as see-through or anything. It just is lightweight. It's like a perfect spring garment for Wisconsin because it's like sometimes it's a little too cold to not have anything. I mean, to like wear something like a t-shirt, but it's like a little too cold to just wear a t-shirt. So just throwing this on and having it as an option, but still it's really lightweight, it folds up and squishes down really easily, is also very nice. Yarn wise, I did use a yarn that I thrifted from a sweater. So I had this thing that I used to do, and I still kind of do, where I would go out and I would buy sweaters and unravel them for the yarn. And I found this men's, I think it was an extra large green merino wool sweater. And I was like, yeah. It was a pain in the butt to unravel, and it sent so many little like floofs everywhere because it was just old, I think. But I got a lot of yarn from it, and it matched pretty much perfectly with the Drops Kidsilk, which is the yarn I held it together with. So it just, the colors went really well together. So I chose to pair those two. And yeah, I really like this garment. I didn't like the green when I was knitting it, but when I put it on, I was like, okay, no, I like this color a lot. Some comments for the pattern. One thing that you'll read in a lot of the comments and see is that the raglan increases don't quite line up because of the short row shaping. I decided I didn't care, and I can't tell you where it is because it might be on the back. But when you're knitting it, it does feel very obvious. But then for me, it was like, I'm not going to be able to tell afterwards, and I don't feel like thinking to fix it. This was, again, like a knitting while traveling project, and it was just like, I don't care. So that is a thing to be aware of. I don't think it's terribly difficult to fix, but I did not fix it, and I don't think anybody would ever know unless I intentionally showed them, which would maybe be something I would do, but you know, whatever. I also have my hair down a lot, so like realistically, you're not seeing those raglan increases on the back anyways. One thing to call out is the sleeves are a little shorter. I think they're intended to be more bracelet length sleeves, which I wasn't so sure about at first. I was going to knit them longer than they are, but then I decided I'm just going to stick with it, and I actually really like the way that they fall. I haven't blocked this yet, so it's possible they might grow a little bit with blocking, but I'm perfectly fine with the length that they're at. Like, I think it's cute and matches the rest of the garment well. And yeah, modifications wise, really the only thing I did was I shortened the length of the ribbing slightly, because this was supposed to be a little bit longer, and I was like, oh, it seems like it's long enough already. So I did that on all places there was ribbing, except here. This I followed pattern, but on the hem and the sleeves, I shortened the ribbing just a little bit. So yeah, this is my Lento. Took about 2 weeks to knit. Yarn wise, I don't think I talked about yarn usage for the other two. It's hard to remember everything I have to talk about. But yarn wise, I used up 129 grams of that random green yarn, and then 59 grams of the Drops Kidsilk Mohair, which overall ended up being about 500 yards of each, so about 1,000 yards total. So the socks were all under 100 grams of overall sock, just because they're socks. And none of them are like outrageously long. The Verdigris is a lot longer than I usually make my socks. Like my socks don't usually end up this long, tall is what I mean. Not the Verdigris, the Teal Torch Knits Sinking in My Soul. It's not usually, I don't usually make my socks that long. But you know, I am now realizing I didn't write down how much of the Teal Torch Knits oh no, I did. I just can't find it. Okay, I used up about 80 grams of that, so that's 366 yards is what it comes down to, which is like pretty good. So and I got like 20 grams, yeah, so I can use them as a contrast healer towel or something like that in the future. So I will do totals now for the month of March, and then I can talk about finished objects for April. But totals for the month of March, the overall things that I finished were my 3 pairs of Sock Madness socks, my Valgus, my Celtic Rain, and my, no, because that one's April. 2 pairs of Sock Madness socks, my Valgus and my Celtic Rain. I finished my half and half triangles wrap. I finished my Lento, which I'm currently wearing because I haven't taken it off yet. And I finished a look at my holes for my sister. So I had 5 finished objects in March, 2 of which were socks. But overall, those turned out to be 1,034 grams of yarn and approximately 4,339 yards of yarn. So that is my biggest decrease yet, largely because I made acquisitions in other months, like January, I believe. But if we do then the math of all the other months put together to see sort of yearly totals, my yearly yardage used is 2,583 grams, or I guess yearly yardage net. No, yearly grams net. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Yearly grams net is 2,583 grams and 6,991 yards. So I'm almost at 10K, which is kind of cool, except I'm about to ruin that, I think, with some of the acquisitions from this next month. The only real work in progress that I had to show you was my Halibut sweater, but I finished it yesterday, so it's no longer a work in progress, but I will show you that next. Just sort of like a miscellaneous interlude, something I wanted to share. I shared these in maybe my first podcast. They're my ugly, but real cute socks. Oh, I'm forgetting the pattern name. Thanksgiving socks. I love these, but it's basically, they're slightly modified because I added a heel flap instead of doing an afterthought heel, but I just like grabbed from my scrap vase. I just grabbed from my scrap vase and just knit whatever happened to come up. As you imagine, these had 6 million ends, and I was not thrilled about that, so I've just been procrastinating. But I taught my husband to weave in my ends, and y'all, I mean, he does it better than I do. Like, he is so neat and so patient. And he just does it, and we're like sitting there, we were watching The Last of Us, and he was just weaving in my ends, and I was like, sick. He literally did it for these socks also, and these socks, and the other socks I'm about to show. Incredible. And every once in a while I'll catch him down, he's weaving in my ends, and I'm like, you don't have to do that. Like, I'm not mad, but you don't have to. And he's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, what have I done? Is he enjoying this? Or is he going to use this against me? Anyways, finished objects for April I will talk about. I just have 2. Nope, I lied. I have 3. Let me get to my April page first so that I can give you dates and details and stuff. The first one is the next pair of Sock Madness socks. These were released in early April, so I cast on, they were released on 4/3, so I cast on 4/3, and I finished them on 4/8, so 5 days for this one versus the 2 and then the 4 days for the other 2. They're not blocked or anything, so they aren't sitting quite as nicely as I would like them to, but that's okay. These are called the Socks of Little Brain, in reference to a page of Pooh Bear where they call him a bear of little brain, and they are very appropriately Pooh Bear themed socks. So there's a tiny little balloon here, which is a little bit hard to see in this lighting, but a cable balloon. There's a little collar for like his little shirt going on all the way around, and then he's obviously covered in little bees, and there's the ribbing of his red shirt, and then the honeycombs on the foot. So I made 2 of these, and they are also symmetrical-ish, but they're so cute. Like, at first I was making them and I was like, I don't know about this, like, this is dumb. But now that I've made them, I'm like, honestly, they're kind of cute. They're definitely more of a house sock, and they don't fit me, so my husband's getting them, and I don't imagine he's going to wear them out and about, and that's fine. Also because I knit this part with alpaca. But I think they turned out really cute and are a lovely and fun concept. I did knit the medium version as required, which was 66 stitches, used normal sock needles for it. The way the construction occurred, it was largely like knit the cuff, knit this little collar guy, and then attach them, and then continue on, and then pick up stitches to knit the rest of the foot. And that was fiddly. That was kind of annoying, but even so, I think they turned out really cute. Some details. I am trying not to buy yarn, but I did end up buying this yarn because I just didn't have an equivalent yellow that's a sock yarn. Like, I have this yellow, but it's not a sock yarn, and I wanted them to have some durability. So I did end up buying 2 skeins of long Jawoll. I think in the color, I think the color's Goldenrod, and this is how much I have left. It looks like almost a full skein because it almost is, but that's fine. We'll find something to do with it. This I used yarn I already had, which was just Drops Alpaca in red. I figured it wasn't near like the heel or anything, so it was fine if it was a less durable, more stretchy kind of yarn. And it is, like, I think kind of cute, the textural contrast between the two. So I just bought the beads at my local yarn store, which is called the Sow's Ear, which is where I also got the yarn. If you're ever in Wisconsin, I highly recommend. It's a yarn store and cafe, and it's super cute and lovely, and I just love to spend my time there. Overall on this, I used up 67 grams of the yellow and 24 grams of the red. So that is my first finished object of April. My second finished object of April was one that I finished because I wanted to clear off some needles. I had cast this on a while back, I think in December. It's just a Musselburgh. This is the same Drops Alpaca that I used in the Pooh Bear socks, but I just knit a really simple Musselburgh. It actually ended up being like a perfect 100 grams, which is kind of wild, but it's really soft. It's very warm. It's pretty much a perfect fit. I think I made my gauge was like 6.5 stitches per inch, so I made whatever that corresponded to as the adult medium. If you're not familiar with this pattern, I'll go ahead and show you. I feel like everybody is, because everybody's knitting this. If you're watching knitting YouTube, you're watching other people's knitting YouTube, which everybody has talked about this. So you basically cast on one side, you knit, crown increases outwards, and then you just knit, and then you do your decreases. So you end up with this funny little tube that you can do whatever you want with, but mostly you shove one end into the other and make a hat, which can be a little fiddly, but I just like to, and now I won't be able to do it because, you know, camera. I just like to grab one, like the butt, the head, the butt, I don't know, and just sort of like wiggle it through, keeping my fingers right on there until I align myself with the other side. And then I'll hold them both together inside and just kind of like wiggle it, and then it will just kind of come together really nicely. I haven't blocked this or anything. I honestly don't normally block my musselburgh. I just wear it, and then it just kind of accustoms itself to the shape of my head. So I finished this. I don't need any more hats, but I had cast this on when I just needed something plain, and then I just haven't needed something plain for a while, especially with like the half and half triangle wrap and so on. So I just kind of wanted to get it off the needles and have them free again for something else, which I'll show you later. But yeah, I love this pattern. I've knit it 6 million times, and I will certainly knit it again. It's just such a good one for like miscellaneous sock yarn. And I bought a ton of the Drops Alpaca for a hat for my brother's girlfriend, and then I bought too much for sure, so I needed to use up the rest of it, and this was like a perfect 100 grams. I look like Christmas right now with these two colors. So my final finished object of April is the Halibut sweater. I'm probably gonna, if I manage to get myself to record an end of April podcast, I'm probably gonna show these things again so that they factor into the totals, but I just won't talk about them as much. The Halibut sweater, sorry for the teaser, is a sweater by Caitlin Hunter. It's the fish sweater. You've probably seen it somewhere. It's just fish. It's like a deep yoke, and then you knit the rest. So it's worked top down. You knit the fish and color work, and then you knit the rest. I've wanted to knit this sweater ever since I saw it, but I just didn't have either the yarn or the passion, or maybe both. But back when Inga was doing her like knitting traditions with WoolyKnits thing, I bought some yarn in black and white for the specific purpose of making this, and I actually did it. So I cast this off literally last night at like 12 a.m. so I haven't blocked it. I've done nothing. It's just, this is its purest form. I did sew on my ends, which is unlike me, and I did it. I made this for my husband, so it's a little too big for me, which is why I will not be putting it on. But I do have theoretical plans and enough yarn to make myself one in a smaller size. I made my husband the size 4, and I did make some modifications just to account for it being for him versus myself. For example, I like a cropped sweater. He is not as big of a fan, so lengthwise I just knit it longer. I didn't measure how long this was. I just put it on him and kind of like just saw when he felt comfortable. He was getting a little in his head about it because he would like raise his arms and it would just go, you know, all the way up. And I'm like, yes, I understand, but let's be realistic. So it is a good length. The yarn I used here is the WoolyKnits 4-ply British wool. So it is a bit rustic, like it's a little bit, tiny bit scratchy. There was like tiny bits of vegetation, like small, not noticeable really, in it, but I think I would have a hard time wearing it directly next to skin. I think it'll be interesting to see how he feels, but probably I think he's going to end up wearing something under it, which is fine. And that I think also means that if it's a teensy bit too short, it's not a huge deal. Modifications, I made a couple. The main one was there's sleeve decreases that occur every some number of rows, and I did one less than it called for just because the sleeves were getting a little bit too long. And then in her pictures, her sleeves have like a rolled cuff, so they're much longer. And I just cut them off a little early because my husband was like, I don't need a rolled cuff. Like, that's the style element that does not fit me. And I was like, yep, that's fine. I did do like the standard crew neck, and yeah. Water break. I think if I make this for myself, when I make this for myself, I'll do maybe the mock neck for myself so it sits a little higher. And I may do the rolled sleeves, but also make it a tiny bit cropped because I like my sweaters a little bit cropped. The fit is pretty good, but I do find the deep yoke to just like generally be a little weird. Because it just gives you, so a deep yoke is basically, a yoked sweater is when it's just like knit in a circle all the way around, which can be kind of interesting for fit. This does have some short rows. Oh, I'm hundo P holding it the wrong way. This does have some short rows, so you can see that this side has a lot more than this like area than this side. So it does have more fit than just a regular circular yoke without the short rows, but I think that I find, I'm going to take this off now, yokes in general to be a little bit funny. They don't quite ever seem to fit right on my body in particular. I think some of that is just the act of being a woman and like not straight on down. Like it just doesn't, the deepness that I need for the yoke doesn't match what I'd expect for the rest of my body, and that always ends up a little weird. So I don't know if I'll make any modifications based on that. It works okay on my husband. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see it after blocking too, because right now it is definitely like a little wiggly. But yeah, my Halibut sweater. This took a really long time, or it felt like it took a really long time. I started it in November 7th, 2022, and I just finished it yesterday, 4/10/2023. Once I got to the stockinette, it was like pretty straight and simple, and these sleeves were even fine. Like normally I'm a sleeve island girl, I get kind of stuck there, but for me the fish was just like so much focus and concentration, and I was not always there. So yarn wise, I only bought like hanks of the white. I bought like a hank, 200 grams of the white, and I wound it off into balls, but I did buy 2 cones of the black so that I could knit from them simultaneously. I do really like knitting from the cones, but it is also hard because it's not super travel friendly, I find. Like I'm not bringing my cones a lot of places because I just don't have the room. Most of my bags don't have room to just put yarn cones in them. So that is my final finished object that I have to share with you for April, and I'm not going to do totals or anything like that because the month is not over and we'll figure that out. Yeah, I have talked so much. We're 54 minutes in, maybe more after I edit, and I still have things to talk about, so I'm gonna kind of zoom now. Works in progress. I don't have that many. I actually only have a couple, and I don't even know where they are, so I don't know if I'll show them to you. One of them is in, I'm just surrounded by chaos. It was in a bag. It's in a small, oh, here it is. Here it is. And this bag's so cute. It's just a little tiny one. I usually use it for socks. I think it's from the Knit McKinley on Etsy, and I literally love it more than anything. So cute. Literally the world's tiniest work in progress. I started an excavation blanket. I saw high fiber knits and I just keep seeing it, and I wanted a scrappy project. And I guess I was like craving the chaos garter of the half and half triangles wrap, so we've made a new one. I'm just using scraps from my scrap vase. and I'm trying to set no expectations with myself in terms of like color or timing or when I finish this. We've ended up with like a very cool color situation so far, but we're gonna just see where it goes. This is just fingering weight yarn of various types, and these are, I think, size 2, 2.7 millimeter needles. So that is work in progress number 1. This is a free pattern on Ravelry, so you can go look it up. But the gist is literally like knit, knit back, like knit with increases, knit back with increase on each side so that it continues to grow, and then you just have that yarn at the end. You tie a little knot in it, well, tie a tiny little knot in it, and eventually that will be like a nice little fringe. You'll cut it to length. So that's the first work in progress, but not like one that I'm trying to finish anytime soon. The second one isn't even knitting, but today I was just in a mood and I thought, why don't I cast on a giant crochet basket? So that's what I did. I literally cast this on this morning, and it's growing so quick because I'm holding 3 strands of this yarn together. The yarn is Columbia Minerva Iceland, which is a yarn I got from like a yard sale. Truly like these gigantic bags of it. I think I got probably 8 skeins of it years and years ago, and I tried to knit a sweater out of it, but it was just like a little too itchy and thick and hard to work with. It was like, it felt so firm when I was knitting with it that it hurt my hands. So I was like, okay, we're gonna table that, and I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. And I have it in a bunch of different, like, not a bunch, but a couple of different colors and things too, and I think that like this little basket vibe is very cute. It's quite, you know, it seems pretty stable. We'll see how it gets as it gets taller. But it's using up the yarn really quick, which is nice and kind of what I wanted. So this is my second work in progress. I literally just Googled scrap crochet basket and clicked the first Google link. So that's what I'm using. Eventually I will add handles by just crocheting a chain instead of crocheting along the edge. I'm so used to knitting. Instead of crocheting along the edge, I'll crochet a chain, and that will leave a gap, and then when I go back around a couple more times, it will just build it up to be a little more structurally firm. So this is my first work in progress. It looks really floppy right now, but I have faith it'll look more normal once stuff is in it, and if I hate it, maybe I'll just donate it and somebody else will like it, and I will be done with this yarn that I wasn't going to use anyways. So there we are. And yeah, I have one other thing I'm working on, but it's a secret test knit, so I can't show you. But it's a sock, so you'll see it sometime in the future. Those are all my works in progress. I'm gonna do acquisitions. I'm gonna do a real quick bit on acquisitions, and then I'm going to maybe just talk about random things for a little bit, but we'll start with acquisitions. I again got caught up in WoolyKnit stuff because I just love their yarn. I really wanted to try their merino in particular because I do find the British wool to be a teensy bit too rustic for me, and I think merino is usually more in my like vibe. So I did end up buying some merino yarn, which also qualified for the well-loved WoolyKnits knit along. So it was on sale, which is hard to resist. And if I'm gonna buy from England, like, I'm gonna buy a lot of things, so I did buy more than one. But this is the first one I bought. Oh, the names are in here. Okay, this one is Tierra Beige Nep. It's 500 grams of merino wool. You can see it's pretty thin, but I just really liked the color and the vibe of the little neps. Like, I want to make a cardigan out of this. I'm thinking Field Day Cardigan by Ozetta, but I'm not sure, but I love her. I also just bought also a merino in sort of like a neutral gray. This is called Kalina Gray, C-A-L-I-N-A. No specific dreams for this, but if you have any suggestions, definitely feel free to share. They are very soft. I obviously haven't knit them up yet because they're still, you know, like this, but I'm excited to see if that softness translates and how it feels different than the Halibut sweater that I have. The other two things I bought were just sort of excitement for summer. I always like really mustardy colors, although this one doesn't feel like it looks that good against my skin, but whatever. This is just a cotton cone, so it's 100% combed cotton. Looks like it's about a fingering weight as well. And this is the color mustard yellow, so I bought that with the idea of making maybe some tank top, t-shirt kind of situation, something a little bit looser and more comfy. I have 2 outline tanks already, and I think this would also be a really cute outline tank, so maybe something like that, but I also know there's just a lot of summer patterns coming out right now, so maybe I'll just peruse and do something new. And then the final last one, which I was hesitant about buying and then bought anyways. A lot of the colors that I did want were out and I just really wanted it, so I just kind of picked something, and maybe I'll try over dyeing this or something because the color's not quite what I like. But this is the linen cotton and the color is Cork Cream. It almost presents like green, like kind of like a really weird greenish yellow color, like really light, but just like this slight tint of green that I don't know if I love. Maybe it's the lighting. I'm gonna take it physically outside to see, but I think when I was buying it, that was my fear, and I thought hopefully the pictures are not true to what I am seeing, and I think they are, but that's fine. I didn't have any dreams for this either. Again, maybe just some kind of summer top. So unfortunately, these are big acquisitions, so we are way up in our yarn quantity for April. I think there's absolutely no way I will be net negative for April, especially given that I have like 0 works in progress on the, you know, like not really any works in progress on the needles. So, oh well, such is life. I am going to be doing a test knit starting soon for, I think, Fiction Fiber of her static tank. So that will be something I'm working on. I haven't picked up my yarns or anything yet, but I have a plethora of sock yarns to choose from, so we'll see what I decide to do there. But yeah, so those are the big things. I think I wrote down some random things to talk about. So let me go back, and I'm just gonna give maybe the teensiest little life update. Oh wait, no, there is one more thing I wanted to show that's yarn related, and that is something I've been planning and dreaming of. That's not particularly helpful. So many of you have at least seen or heard of or read this book, Lerka Bagger, Close Knit. She's so cool. I mean, she's so cool, but she does a lot of these really beautiful patterns where it's like just chaos. So it's usually some kind of yarn and then something else held with it. And so I've been collecting my scraps and putting them together into little scrap blobs so that I can prep to knit one of her projects. And I haven't picked which one yet, and I don't know when I'll do it, but I did buy a bunch of Drops Lima so that it could be my like main yarn. And I'm going to show you guys my blobs. I've been slowly putting blobs together. So these are all weights of yarn. They're all different times. It's like I could probably guess what project a lot of these came from, but they're just fun little blobs of chaos that I will eventually hold together. I feel like it likes to focus more over here, maybe because my camera's over here. Yeah. that I'll eventually hold together with this yarn and make a very beautiful sweater of some sort. Right now I just don't have nearly enough. I have maybe 2 handfuls, but I think I need almost an equivalent amount to this. I've been so tempted to just cast it on and start, but I'm a little bit nervous that my colors will like switch too much, because I'll like be in a mood, acquire a bunch of one color, add a bunch of that color, and then it'll be, which maybe isn't a bad thing, I don't know. But the way I've been working that is through this scrap box. Every time I get new scraps, I just throw them in here, and even if they're really little, I start tying them off into little blobs. So I've got a few scrap projects going on now. This one is going to be, I think, the longest lasting, just because it requires tying them all together. But the excavation blanket too is going to last me a long time, because it is a lot of knitting. Yeah, so that is all the knitting content, I think, officially. I have a project up here which should be a whip, but I'm not working on it, so I'm not considering it a whip. Right now it's just an abandoned thing that I'll work on eventually. I did find this sock the other day, like the pair to this sock, so now I can finally finish that, which will be good, because I just had the toe left because I couldn't remember how many decreases I did. So yeah. Random stuff. I'll be short because I've been talking for too long. March was big. We went on a trip. We drove from Madison down to Wichita. We stopped in Kansas City for barbecue, which was good. Then we went to Wichita, stayed the night. We drove to Fort Worth and stayed with a friend for a few days, which was just like so lovely and good. Our dogs played together and just had the best time. And I don't know, maybe I'll throw in pictures of some of these things if I remember. So if I do, they'll just be chilling right here and hopefully relevant to whatever I'm talking about. Then we went to Houston, which is where my husband's family lived, and we spent a few weeks there. We attempted to go to Big Bend amidst all of this, which is where we had a terrible RV experience. The front tire exploded, and then the engine failed, and we ended up just driving back because we really had only planned for the weekend, and it was like a 10-hour drive. So between those two things happening, it ended up costing us pretty much our entire trip time. So we literally couldn't, like, if we had managed to make it after those events happened, we would have been there with like 2 hours, and then we would have had to turn around and go back. So that was kind of a bummer because we were looking forward to it, obviously, but such is life. So we just ended up driving back to Houston. We ate all the food we bought for the trip in Houston. We just ate really good. We had some galbi, which is like a Korean marinated beef dish. It's very delicious. And we had some street tacos and just a lot of really good food. We ate, every time we go to Houston, we eat so much good food, so maybe I will throw up some pictures of the magic we had between like bubble tea and Korean barbecue, and we had a lot of really good Vietnamese food. So we had some delicious pho and some bonnet, which I had never had before, but it's like a sizzling iron platter that comes with bread and egg and beef, and it's like you just kind of like combine them and eat it, and it was incredible. And some other things. I'm always very excited when I go to Houston because the food scene is a lot better than Madison in terms of Asian food, at the very least. And when we want Asian food here, we typically make it. There's options, but they don't have, in our experience, the authenticity that we feel like Houston has, or even the volume, quite honestly. You just get a lot more food for the value. But it was really good. We ate a ton and just had a nice time visiting my husband's family. Played a bit of pickleball, which I feel like is happening in the world right now. I don't know that I'm a pickleball girl, but we played. And yeah, on the way back, we swung over to New Orleans, and I saw some old colleagues that I used to work with, and we just also really enjoyed the food there, as we always do. We went to Toop's Meadery. We went to Superior Seafood. We We got beignets, of course. Yeah, I always like New Orleans. I've always had such good experiences there, and I would go there for work every once in a while. And I feel like just the people I work with are locals, so they had such wonderful recommendations for things we should do or eat and so on. So I haven't spent much time in like the maybe what people consider New Orleans when they go there, but I have gone to, I think, a lot of really cool places. And then finally we drove from New Orleans to Hot Springs, Arkansas, which was an interesting little town. It wasn't quite what I expected as a national park, but it's fine. It was still a good time, and we had some good food. We had pizza at DeLuca's, which was an interesting atmosphere, and I'm going to leave it at that. The pizza was quite good, but we did like small hikes. We had our dog throughout all of this, so we brought him out with us, and mostly we just relaxed and like had a nice time. We did go into one of the bathhouses. It was interesting. It was what I expected. There was a lot of old people there, and that's fine, but I think it was something I don't necessarily feel the need to do again. It was a good experience, but I'm kind of good with that. And then finally, we drove from Arkansas back to Wisconsin, and ended our trip maybe a couple of weeks ago, and we've just been kind of like getting back in the groove since coming back. We did a huge grocery shopping trip, all that fun stuff. The weather's getting warmer, so we're thinking about doing some of the state parks and stuff just so we can have a little time to explore and so on, because I kind of get the feeling we might be moving away sometime. I don't know. I have no real reason to say that, but both my husband and I are job hunting, so we're being open to opportunities that are in other locations. Neither of us are from here, so it wouldn't be crazy if we moved away, but we also don't really know where we would want to go, so it's like, if the right opportunity comes up, maybe we'll move, which is crazy to think about, but we'll see. Such is life. It's crazy to think that like everybody used to move for work. Like remote work wasn't really a thing. I mean, it was, but like not really, versus now where I feel like remote work is so big that you feasibly can find a new job, depending on which sector you're in, what you're doing, without moving. And you can just kind of be wherever you would like to be. And that's bananas. So, anyways, I hopefully will have thrown up some beautiful pictures of food and other things. I talked a lot about my life. I will maybe at the very end here, when my face is gone, throw up some videos and things of my dog and my chickens, and whatever else just bopping around. Since I've been outside so much, the chickens have been hanging out outside with me. In the beginning of the season, I don't like to let them out unless I'm around. They stay in their coop only because hawks will swoop down and eat them, because there's not enough like foliage and cover for them to hide under. And we've had that experience with my favorite chicken, so I'm nervous about it. So I like to be outside, or at least close to outside when they're outside. So I've been spending a lot of time outside with them, reading and things like that. I've been reading Babel, Babel, which is really good, and I think I brought it with me. Next up, I'm planning to read The Elegance of the Hedgehog. So I've got some things to read and things to do, and a new Sock Madness sock will probably come out soon, so I've even got some things to knit, but overall it's just like a lovely little transition into the spring and the warm weather and the magic that is the Wisconsin summer. I know it's not summer yet, but once it hits like 70 degrees or even high 60s, mid 60s, I'm like, shorts. I'm like, that's what I'm doing. And I just sit outside and absorb the sun. I genuinely think I gave myself a minor sunburn the other day just because I sat outside for like 6 hours straight. And I put face sunscreen on, but I didn't put sunscreen on my arms or anything like that, and I probably should have. Yeah, I don't know. I've talked for so long. I talked about knitting. I talked about life just a tiny bit. I do honestly really have to pee, so I feel like it's time for me to call it and to let my husband come into the basement to do whatever he wanted to do. So, yeah. Thank you all for hanging out. If you made it this far, you are a trooper. And yeah, I don't know if you guys have anything you'd like to see or any questions or anything you'd like to share, ideas for my yarn, definitely feel free to comment. And feel free to follow me on here. Subscribe. Feel free to subscribe here or follow me on Instagram. My username's the same in both places, Nap and Knit. If you are so intrigued, no pressure. But yeah. Alrighty, y'all. It was good to see you, I guess. And I hope you have a lovely rest of day or night, whatever day it is when you're watching this. I have no idea when I will edit it because an hour and 17 minutes is really long. So it'll probably take 2 days just to get on my computer. We'll see. Maybe I'll do it outside. But yeah, thank you all for being here, for hanging out, and I hope you have a lovely time and enjoy your knitting and all that fun stuff. Bye.